Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's breaking update is one of the most critical developments in the ongoing Middle East crisis. The United States has placed its naval forces on high alert, with one of its most powerful aircraft carriers deployed into the heart of the Middle East. The move comes amid rising tensions, volatile military maneuvers, and a very real possibility of direct confrontation between regional powers and the United States. This story isn't just about a ship. It's about global power projection, the message Washington is sending to its allies and adversaries, and the dangerous path this region is being pushed toward. Let's break it all down. The U.S. Navy has long maintained a formidable presence in the Middle East, but recent days have seen an unprecedented escalation. According to defense insiders, the Pentagon ordered the carrier strike group to reposition closer to hotspots where flashpoints with Iran, Hezbollah, and potentially even Russia could erupt. This isn't just routine deployment. It's a clear signal that Washington expects military confrontation to be more than just a possibility. The aircraft carrier, supported by destroyers, cruisers, and submarines, is essentially a floating city of war. With more than 70 aircraft on board, ranging from fighter jets to surveillance planes, it can dominate the skies, enforce blockades, and deliver precision strikes anywhere in the region. When such a ship sails into contested waters, the message is simple: prepare for escalation. Now, why is this happening at this exact moment? To understand, we have to zoom out. The Middle East right now is a chessboard with too many players and too few rules. On one side, you have Iran and its allies, who have been increasingly bold in both rhetoric and military maneuvers. On the other, you have Israel, already engaged in active operations, backed fully by Washington. Add to this the unfolding Gaza crisis, Hezbollah's actions in Lebanon, and even Russia's shadow role, and you can see why the U.S. wants its most powerful assets close at hand. According to sources, intelligence reports suggested possible attacks on U.S. assets in the region. These could come from Iranian-backed militias, from naval harassment in the Persian Gulf, or from direct missile launches aimed at American bases in Iraq, Syria, or elsewhere. By deploying an aircraft carrier, the U.S. is essentially putting a shield and a sword right in the middle of the storm. But let's be clear, this isn't just defensive. Washington also uses carriers as tools of intimidation and deterrence. The sight of American jets roaring off the deck sends a message: we are ready to act. And historically, whenever tensions flare in the Middle East, U.S. carriers have been the first to show up. This move comes after weeks of escalating statements. Iranian leaders have openly warned the U.S. against deepening its involvement in Gaza and against supporting Israel's aggressive military campaigns. Hezbollah, emboldened by its ties to Tehran, has threatened to expand the conflict further north. And Russia, while not directly confronting the U.S., has condemned Washington's interference and has been quietly coordinating with Iran behind the scenes. All of this means one thing: the Middle East is now standing on a razor's edge. Military analysts are split on what this deployment means. Some argue it's purely symbolic, a show of strength to reassure allies like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Others, however, warn that this is the clearest sign yet that Washington is preparing for direct engagement. Remember, carriers are not sent lightly. They are expensive, vulnerable, and require massive logistical support. When the U.S. sends one into a tense zone, it expects to use it if necessary. Now, let's imagine a few scenarios. Scenario 1. The carrier's presence deters Iran and its proxies, cooling down the rhetoric and forcing regional actors to think twice before launching attacks. That's the best-case scenario: power projection that prevents war. Scenario 2. The presence of the U.S. fleet provokes Iranian-backed militias to launch attacks, perhaps on American bases in Iraq or on Allied ships in the Gulf. This would trigger a cycle of retaliation, drawing the U.S. into open conflict. Scenario 3. A full-scale escalation involving Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, and possibly even Syria, where the U.S. carrier becomes central to air operations, striking enemy positions, defending Israeli skies, and ensuring Washington's dominance over the Mediterranean and Gulf. Unfortunately, history shows us that the second and third scenarios are often more likely. There's also a political angle here. Domestically, Washington's leadership wants to show that it won't abandon its allies or appear weak in the face of threats. Sending an aircraft carrier is a way of proving resolve, not just to enemies abroad, but also to the American public and global partners. In other words, this is as much about perception as it is about actual combat readiness. But this raises another critical question. What happens if this deterrence fails? What if, despite the carrier's presence, Iranian missiles are launched, Hezbollah opens a second front, or Russia ramps up its involvement? In that case, the U.S. will be drawn into a conflict far bloodier, costlier, and riskier than any it has faced in the region in recent years. Remember, wars don't always start with grand declarations. They often begin with small sparks. A single missile strike, a naval clash, or even a drone attack gone wrong could set off a chain reaction. And with a U.S. aircraft carrier in the middle of it all, that spark could ignite into a full inferno. Let's also not forget the economic stakes. The Middle East isn't just about politics, it's about energy. The Persian Gulf remains one of the most vital arteries for global oil supply. Any confrontation here could send prices skyrocketing, disrupt shipping lanes, and plunge the global economy into chaos. The presence of a U.S. carrier is, therefore, also about protecting these economic interests. Washington knows that if the oil lanes are threatened, the entire world will feel the shock. And this is why so many nations are watching closely. Europe, already fragile due to the war in Ukraine, cannot afford another crisis. China, heavily dependent on Middle Eastern energy, is also keeping a careful eye. For Beijing, Washington's presence is a reminder that despite its growing power, the U.S. still holds military dominance in key global choke points. As of now, the situation remains tense but contained. The U.S. carrier has not yet launched offensive operations, but its fighters are conducting constant patrols, surveillance flights, and readiness drills. Intelligence sharing between the U.S. and Israel has intensified, with reports suggesting that American aircraft could soon join Israeli strikes if things spiral further. On the other side, Iran continues to test boundaries. Its naval vessels shadow U.S. ships in the Gulf. Its militias remain on alert, and its missile forces are believed to be on standby. Hezbollah has increased its activity along the northern border of Israel, raising fears of a two-front war. All it would take is one miscalculation for the region to plunge into a new, devastating conflict. In conclusion, the deployment of a U.S. aircraft carrier to the Middle East underlines just how fragile and explosive the situation has become. It's not just about protecting Israel or countering Iran. It's about controlling the future of the region, the flow of energy, and the balance of global power. The world has seen this movie before. Great powers positioning themselves in the Middle East, promising to deter conflict, but instead becoming drawn deeper and deeper into the flames. The question now is, will history repeat itself? Or can this show of force prevent the next great war? What we do know for sure is that the stakes have never been higher. The Middle East is on high alert, and with the U.S. carrier in position, the world is holding its breath. Stay tuned for more updates as this story continues to unfold.